Put him in cuffs, my sister Isabel said. Her finger was pointed directly at my son, her voice as cold and sharp as glass. The officer looked uncertain, his gaze dropping to Leo, who's only 12 years old. Leo was trembling, looking impossibly small and lost in the opulent grandeur of my parents' living room. "Ma'am, are you certain?" the officer asked, his tone laced with hesitation. "He's just a boy." "He stole my sapphire necklace," Isabel retorted, her expression unyielding. "It's an heirloom. Check his backpack." The officer knelt and unzipped Leo's school bag. From inside, he pulled out the necklace. The deep blue sapphires caught the light from the chandelier, glittering like a constellation of cruel stars. It was a setup. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. "Mom, I didn't!" Leo cried out, his voice cracking. Tears streamed down his pale cheeks. "I swear, I never touched it." I spun around, my eyes pleading with my parents, Eleanor and Richard Sterling. They were standing near the grand marble fireplace, holding their crystal wine glasses, looking on as if watching a mildly interesting play. They didn't move. They didn't say a word. They watched their only grandson be treated like a common thief, and they did nothing, absolutely nothing, to defend him. The metallic click of the handcuffs snapping shut around Leo's slender wrists echoed in the cavernous room. That one sound was the sound of my world breaking apart. As the police led my sobbing son toward the heavy front door, the part of me that had spent a lifetime desperately craving my family's approval finally withered and died. I saw the faint, triumphant smirk on my sister's lips. I saw my parents' calculated silence. Something inside me shattered, but in its place, something else, something far colder and harder, began to stir. Before we get into the rest of this story, do me a quick favor and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. The massive oak door slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the house like a gunshot. For a moment, I just stood there, paralyzed, staring at the polished wood. I could hear the faint, receding wail of the patrol car siren as it carried my son away into the night. My son, Leo, 12 years old. He was wearing his favorite green hoodie, the one with a small hot chocolate stain on the sleeve that I could never quite get out. He was just a kid, a sweet boy who loved building intricate Lego cities and drawing comic books. And now, he was in the back of a police car, his small hands cuffed behind him. When the siren finally faded into nothing, the silence it left behind was a crushing weight. It was thick, heavy, and suffocating. I turned around, my movements slow and deliberate. My family was still arranged like a perfect portrait of indifference. My mother, Eleanor, stood by the fireplace, meticulously smoothing a non-existent wrinkle on her designer silk blouse. She looked irritated, not heartbroken. She looked like someone whose dinner reservation had been mishandled, not someone whose grandson had just been arrested. My father, Richard, was at the ornate bar cart, pouring himself another measure of aged whiskey. The clinking of the ice against the crystal glass was a crisp, normal sound that made my stomach churn with nausea. And then there was Isabel, my older sister. She was perched on the plush velvet sofa, her legs elegantly crossed. She looked utterly serene. She picked up a delicate cracker topped with a sliver of artisan cheese and took a dainty bite, chewing with placid composure. She wasn't even looking at me. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb flicking across the screen as if absolutely nothing had happened. A fire ignited in my chest, a burning rage that started in my gut and clawed its way up my throat. "You just let them take him," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. "You just stood there and watched." My mother let out a long, theatrical sigh and fixed me with a look of profound weariness. "Chloe, please," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Don't make a scene. The neighbors are probably already peering through their curtains." "A scene?" I shrieked, the sound tearing from my throat, raw and ragged. "Mom, they put Leo in handcuffs. He's a child." "And you're worried about the neighbors?" My father turned from the bar, taking a slow sip of his drink. His face was a mask of stern disapproval, the same look he always gave me when he thought I was being irrational, the look that always meant I was the problem. "Lower your voice," he commanded. "You're becoming hysterical." "I have every right to be hysterical," I shouted, my hand shaking as I pointed at Isabel. "She's lying. You all know she's lying. Leo would never steal that necklace." Isabel finally graced me with her attention, looking up from her phone. Her eyes, a cool, placid blue, were like chips of ice. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "The necklace was in his bag, Chloe," she said, her voice as smooth as silk. "We all saw the officer find it. Are you suggesting the police are liars now?" "I'm calling you a liar," I seethed, taking an involuntary step toward her. "You planted it. I saw you. You were in the entryway where we left our coats and bags. You were there for at least 5 minutes before we sat down for dinner. You put it in his backpack." Isabel laughed, a soft, dry sound completely devoid of humor. "And why would I do that? That necklace is worth $8,000. Why on earth would I risk losing an heirloom just to frame your misbehaved little boy?" "Because you despise him," I said, the words catching in my throat as tears began to burn my eyes. "You despise that he's a happy kid. You despise that I'm happy. You can't stand it when the spotlight isn't on you for a single second." My mother moved to stand between us, holding up her hands like a referee. "That is enough," she snapped, her glare fixed on me. "Chloe, stop inventing these ridiculous fantasies. Your sister is a pillar of this community. She runs the Sterling Foundation. She donates millions to charity. She would not lie about something like this." "She is lying to your face right now," I yelled, my voice cracking with desperation. "Perhaps Leo simply made a mistake," my father chimed in, moving to stand beside my mother, forming a solid, impenetrable wall of judgment. "He has been acting out recently, hasn't he? His grades are slipping." "He got a B+ in science," I argued, the words tasting like ash. "That's not acting out. That's not a gateway to grand larceny." "He lacks a strong father figure," my mother said, her voice adopting a tone of faux sympathy that was more insulting than any accusation. "It's challenging for boys without a man in the house. They act out for attention. Perhaps he just wanted to feel important." I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the way they stood together, Eleanor, Richard, and Isabel, a perfect unified front. They were the accomplished ones, the flawless ones, the ones who valued status and wealth and public perception above all else. And then there was me, Chloe, the single mom, the one who worked as a paramedic and drove a 10-year-old sedan, the one who lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, not a sprawling mansion. I was the family's resident failure, the one they tolerated but never truly respected. "He didn't steal it," I said again, my voice sinking to a whisper. "He's a good kid. He's kind. He gently carries spiders outside instead of squishing them. He cries during sad parts in movies. He is not a thief." My mother crossed her arms, her face hardening into a mask of grim finality. "Your sister would not lie, Chloe," she repeated, as if it were a sacred chant. "If the necklace was in his bag, then he took it. You need to accept that. You need to find him a lawyer and get him professional help." "Help?" I asked, incredulous. "He needs his family. He needs his grandparents to stand up for him, to say this is a mistake. We cannot defend a criminal, my father stated coldly, his words like ice shards. We have a reputation to uphold in this city. If word gets out that we are defending a thief, we'll be made to look like fools. He is your grandson, I screamed, the last of my composure shattering. He's a disappointment, Isabel said from the sofa. The room fell utterly silent. I turned to look at my sister. She was smiling now, a small, predatory smile that didn't reach her eyes. He's just like you, Chloe, she said, her voice soft and venomous. So messy, so emotional, always wanting things he can't have. I suppose the chaos just runs in your side of the family. Your side of the family, not our family, your side. As if Leo and I were a contamination, a separate species that didn't truly belong. That was the moment the final, ugly truth clicked into place. This was never about a necklace. This was never about a theft. This was about control. Isabel had been playing this game with me my entire life. When we were little, she would break her own dolls and then blame me, just to watch me get punished. In high school, she spread vicious rumors about me just to see me ostracized and alone. She fed on my misery. It made her feel powerful. And my parents, they always let her. They always chose her because she was the brilliant one, the one who married a wealthy man, the one whose picture was always in the society pages. They would sacrifice me, and now they would sacrifice my son, just to keep their precious Isabel content. I looked at my mother and remembered all the times I had called her, exhausted and lonely, only to be told I was being overly dramatic. I looked at my father and remembered how he'd never once made it to Leo's soccer games because of business, yet he never missed one of Isabel's charity balls. They didn't love us, not in any real, meaningful way. They loved the idea of a perfect family, but they didn't love the actual people in it, not if we were inconvenient or flawed. A wave of ice-cold clarity washed over me, starting in my toes and rising up to extinguish the fire in my chest. The anger was gone, replaced by something much sharper. I stopped crying. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "Okay," I said. My mother blinked, surprised by my sudden calm. "Okay," I repeated, my voice even. "If that's how you want it." I walked over to the chair where my purse was and picked it up. My hands were perfectly steady. "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "We haven't even had dessert yet." I almost laughed at the absurdity. I looked at her as if she were a stranger. "My son is sitting in a police station, Mom. I'm going to get him." "You can't just go down there and cause a disturbance," my father warned. "Let the authorities handle it." "I am going to get my son," I said. "And I am never, ever bringing him back to this house again." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," Isabel said, waving her hand dismissively. "You'll be back next weekend for brunch. You always come back. You need us. You need Mom's help with his private school tuition. You need Dad's connections." And she was right. I had always come back. I had always swallowed my pride, apologized for things that weren't my fault, and endured the casual cruelty, just to maintain the illusion of having a family. But not this time. I walked to the door and put my hand on the cold brass handle. I stopped and turned back to look at Isabel. "You planted it," I said. I didn't shout. My voice was quiet, a simple statement of fact. Isabel stood and glided over to me, her heels clicking ominously on the polished hardwood floor. She stopped just inches from my face, her expensive perfume enveloping me in a suffocating cloud. She leaned in close so my parents couldn't hear. "Prove it," she whispered, her eyes dancing with a sick, thrilling excitement. She was savoring this. She loved the chaos she had created. She loved that she had destroyed my evening. She loved that she had terrorized a little boy. "Prove it," she repeated, her cruel smile burning itself into my memory as I walked out the door. It stayed with me as I got into my old sedan. It stayed with me as my trembling hands fumbled with the keys. Prove it. The drive to the police station, normally a 20-minute trip, felt like an eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped thing. The station was a sterile, unforgiving building of gray concrete and buzzing fluorescent lights that made everything look sallow and grim. I rushed to the front desk, separated from a heavy-set officer by a thick pane of glass. "I'm here for Leo Reed," I said, my voice breathless. "He's a child. He was just brought in." The officer didn't look up right away. He finished typing a sentence with 2 fingers before peering at me over the top of his reading glasses. "Name?" "Chloe Reed. I'm his mother." He typed something else into his computer. "He's being processed." Processed. The word felt like a physical chokehold. "He's 12. You can't process a 12-year-old. He needs me." "He's a juvenile, ma'am," the officer said with detached calm. "We have procedures. He's with a youth services worker at the moment. You won't be able to see him until they're finished." "How long will that be?" "An hour, maybe 2. 2 hours. My son was alone in this cold, terrifying place for 2 hours. I turned away from the glass, feeling a wave of nausea. A row of hard plastic chairs in a garish shade of orange lined one wall. I sank into one. I pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls. Not from my parents. It was my supervisor from the hospital asking if I could cover a shift next week. I stared at the phone, then let it fall into my lap. I sat in the echoing silence of the police station waiting room, watching as other people were brought in. A man in handcuffs shouting obscenities. A woman weeping quietly into her hands. And I pictured Leo. I pictured him sitting in a sterile room, his feet not quite touching the floor, crying for me. "Mom, Mom, where are you?" And I couldn't get to him. I was stuck on the other side of a locked door because my sister wanted to feel powerful. I closed my eyes. "Prove it." That's what she'd said. I thought about my entire life, how I had always tried to be the good daughter, the easy one. I kept my head down, worked hard, and never asked for much. I let my parents criticize my job, my apartment, my parenting style. I endured Isabel's constant, cutting little jokes. I believed that if I was just patient enough, just accommodating enough, they would eventually love me. They would eventually see my worth. But sitting there, in that hard plastic chair, I finally understood how wrong I was. They did see me. They saw a doormat, a punching bag. When I was nice, they steamrolled me. When I was quiet, they ignored me. Fairness was a foreign concept in my family. The truth didn't matter. Only winning mattered. My mother didn't care about the truth. She cared about avoiding conflict. My father didn't care about the truth. He cared about his reputation. And Isabel didn't care about the truth. She cared about dominance. I looked down at my hands. They were the hands of a paramedic, chapped from constant washing. They were capable hands. I had spent my entire adult life begging for love, for approval, for a scrap of fairness. Tonight was the last time I would ever beg for anything. I opened my eyes. The tears were gone. Isabel wanted proof. Fine. She felt safe behind her wall of money. She felt untouchable because our parents enabled her. She thought her title as a philanthropist made her a saint. But I knew something about Isabel that no one else seemed to notice. I knew she was arrogant. And arrogant people get sloppy. I remembered something from a family dinner about a year ago. Isabel had left her laptop open on the kitchen island while she took a call. I'd walked past to get a glass of water and had caught a glimpse of an email on the screen. It was from a catering company. The tone was angry. "We still have not been paid for the gala. You assured us the funds were transferred 2 weeks ago." Just then, Isabel had rushed back in and slammed the laptop shut, a flicker of pure panic in her eyes before she covered it with a breezy laugh. "Ugh, boring foundation business," she'd said, waving it off. I hadn't given it a second thought at the time, but now, sitting in this police station, my mind began to connect the dots. Isabel's extravagant lifestyle never quite added up. Her husband Julian was in finance. He made good money, but not spontaneous trips to Milan money, not new luxury SUV every 2 years money. Yet Isabel was constantly redecorating her mansion, buying designer clothes, and flaunting jewelry like the very necklace she'd used to frame my son. Where was all that cash coming from? The foundation, the Sterling Foundation, lighting the way for underprivileged youth. The bitter irony of her charity's slogan was a foul taste in my mouth. She was running a charity to help children while she had her own nephew arrested on a false charge. I stood up and walked to the vending machine, buying a cup of black coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. I drank it slowly, needing the caffeine, needing the clarity. Finally, the desk officer called my name. "Ms. Reed." I hurried back to the window. "Yes." "You can go back. He's being released to your custody, pending a juvenile court hearing." A heavy door buzzed open. I pushed through and saw him. Leo was sitting on a bench in a long, empty hallway. He looked so fragile. His face was red and swollen, his eyes puffy from crying. He saw me and shot up from the bench. "Mom!" He ran to me, crashing into my chest with a force that nearly sent me backward. He wrapped his arms around my waist and buried his face in my shirt, his small body shaking with violent sobs. "I didn't do it," he choked out. "Mom, I swear." I knelt down, pulling him into the tightest hug I had ever given. I could smell his hair, shampoo and fear. "I know," I whispered into his ear. "I know you didn't, sweetie, I know." "Why did Aunt Izzy say that?" he cried. "Why does she hate me so much?" The question shattered what was left of my heart. How do you explain to a 12-year-old that his own aunt is a monster? "She doesn't hate you," I lied. I had to. She's sick, Leo, in her head. She made a terrible, terrible mistake." "I just want to go home," he whispered. "We're going home," I promised, standing and taking his hand. "We're going home, and you are never setting foot in that house again." We walked out of the station and into the cold night air. I buckled him into the passenger seat and wrapped him in the emergency blanket I kept in the back. He curled into a ball and closed his eyes. I got into the driver's seat and put the key in the ignition, but I didn't start the car. I looked at my phone. Not a single text from my mother or father. They were probably finishing their dessert now, discussing how unfortunate the whole evening had been. They were probably consoling Isabel, telling her it wasn't her fault her nephew was a delinquent. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. Prove it. I looked at Leo's sleeping form in the passenger seat. "Okay, Isabel," I whispered to the empty car. Challenge accepted. I started the engine. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was a hunter, and the hunt was about to begin. The next morning, Leo was home, but he wasn't the same. He didn't want his favorite chocolate chip waffles. He just sat at our small kitchen table, pushing a piece of toast around his plate. He looked pale and kept rubbing his wrists, even though the faint red marks from the cuffs had already disappeared. The marks on his skin were fading, but the ones in his mind were still raw. "I don't want to go to school," he whispered, not looking at me. My heart ached for him. "You don't have to," I said gently. We can take a day. We can watch movies and order pizza. He shook his head. If I don't go, everyone will think I'm guilty. I have to go. He was so brave, braver than I ever was. We drove to the middle school in silence. The radio, usually blasting our favorite songs, was off. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw them. The other moms, a couple of them, part of Isabel's pristine social circle, were leaning against a massive black SUV. They glanced at my beat-up sedan, then at Leo. They covered their mouths and whispered to each other. Leo saw them too and tried to shrink down in his seat. "It's okay," I said, forcing a confidence I didn't feel. "Head up, Leo. You have nothing to be ashamed of." He opened the car door. As he walked toward the school entrance, a group of boys near the bike racks pointed at him. "Hey, look! It's the thief!" One of them yelled. Another one laughed. "Better lock up your stuff, guys. Reed's here." Leo didn't turn around. He just kept walking, his head bowed, his backpack a heavy weight on his small shoulders. He vanished into the building. I sat there, my hands strangling the steering wheel. My first instinct was to jump out of the car and scream at those kids, at those mothers. But screaming was what they expected. Isabel had already cast me as the hysterical sister. Screaming would only prove her right. I needed to be cold. I needed to be smart. I drove back to my apartment and called the hospital, telling them I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. I made a large pot of strong black coffee and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. Prove it. I typed the Sterling Foundation into the search bar. The foundation's website was a masterpiece of corporate philanthropy. Photos of smiling children, glossy pictures of Isabel in elegant gowns, presenting oversized checks, photos of my parents standing beside her, beaming with pride. Honesty, integrity, and a brighter future for our youth. The slogan on the homepage made me sick. I started digging. I'm a paramedic, not an accountant, but my job has taught me to look for tiny details, for the subtle signs that something is wrong. I started with public records. All nonprofits have to file their tax returns publicly. Most people just don't bother to look. I looked. I pulled up the foundation's most recent Form 990. It showed they had raised just over $3 million in donations last year. Then I scrolled down to the expenses. A line item for consulting services jumped out at me. A payment of $80,000 to a company called IM Solutions. I am Isabel Montgomery. I searched the state business registry for IM Solutions. It didn't exist. No website, no phone number. The address listed on the tax form was a P.O. box in a town 2 hours away. My heart started to pound. She was paying herself with donor money. But that wasn't enough. That was circumstantial. Then I remembered the laptop. About 2 years ago, Isabel had bought a new, top-of-the-line laptop and had made a grand spectacle of giving her old one to Leo for his schoolwork. "So he can keep up," she'd announced, basking in the family's praise for her generosity. I ran to Leo's room and grabbed the silver laptop from his desk. I opened it. Leo had his own user profile, but Isabel's old administrator account was still there. Password? I tried her birthday. Incorrect. Her wedding anniversary? Incorrect. The name of her purebred dog? Incorrect. I leaned back and thought. Isabel was nothing if not narcissistic. She saw herself as royalty. I typed in Queen Izzy. Incorrect. I tried Sterling Legacy. The screen flashed. Welcome. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely control the trackpad. She hadn't wiped the hard drive. She'd just been arrogant and lazy, so sure that no one in her messy family would ever be smart enough to check. I went straight to the trash bin. She hadn't emptied it. There were hundreds of deleted files. I started opening them. Invoice Gala Catering 2022. PDF. The invoice was for $20,000. But in a screenshot of a bank transfer saved right next to it, the withdrawal from the foundation's account was for $50,000. She doctored the invoice, paid the caterer, and pocketed the $30,000 difference. Scholarship transfer approval, JPG. A record of a $15,000 transfer to a scholarship fund. But I recognized the account number. It was the same bank where she held her personal savings account. And then I found the emails. One to her husband, Julian. Subject: don't worry about the Aspen trip. Body: it's fine. I'll bury the cost in the event supplies budget for the spring fundraiser. The board never looks at the line item receipts anyway. I sat there, frozen. This wasn't just a little skimming. This was systematic, large-scale fraud. She was stealing from donors, from the very children she claimed to be helping, and she was using that stolen money to buy the heirlooms she used to torture her own family. The hypocrisy was dizzying. I had it. I had the screenshots, the emails, the digital breadcrumbs of her greed. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she could crush my son because he was just a kid. She had no idea how wrong she was. But I couldn't just post this on social media. She would claim I'd hacked her, that I'd forged the documents. My parents would bankroll an army of lawyers to sue me into oblivion. I needed to do this the right way. I needed to bring in a professional. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Detective Marcus Thorne. I knew Thorne from the ER. He was a homicide detective who often came in for cases involving assaults or accidents. He was an intimidating man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a stern face that rarely smiled. But I remembered one night, a few years back, when he sat with an elderly woman who had been mugged, holding her hand for over an hour until her family arrived. He was tough, but he was good. He was the only cop I trusted. I pressed the call button. He answered on the third ring. Thorne. His voice was gruff. Detective Thorne, it's Chloe Reed. I'm a paramedic at Oakwood General. We've met a few times. There was a brief pause. I could hear the faint sound of typing in the background. Reed, he said, his voice softening just a little. The one who patched up my partner when that guy pulled a knife on him. That's me, I said. What can I do for you, Chloe? Everything's not okay, I said, taking a shaky breath. I need to speak with you, off the record. I have information about a major fraud case. It involves my sister, Isabel Montgomery. The typing stopped cold. The Sterling Foundation lady? He asked. The one on all the billboards? Yes, that's her. That's a hell of an accusation, Reed, he said, his tone turning serious. You don't just throw a name like that around. I have proof, I said firmly. I have emails, doctored invoices, bank account numbers. She's stealing millions, detective. And last night she had my 12-year-old son arrested to create a smokescreen. There was a long silence. That was your kid? He finally asked. The BE at the Sterling residence? I saw that in the morning log. That was my son, I said, and he's innocent. She framed him. Where are you, Woody? He asked. At home. Don't stay there, he said, his voice urgent. If what you're saying is true, you're a threat to her. Meet me, the old diner on Elm Street, the one with the terrible coffee. Half an hour. I'll be there, I said. And Reed? Yes? Don't waste my time. If this is just some family squabble, I'm walking. It's not a squabble, I said, my voice hard as steel. It's a crime scene. I packed the laptop into a large tote bag along with printouts of the most damning evidence. I drove to the school and picked up Leo early, telling the office he had a dentist appointment. He looked relieved to see me. We drove to the diner, a greasy spoon with cracked red vinyl booths. Thorne was already in a booth in the back corner facing the door. He was wearing a rumpled gray suit and nursing a cup of black coffee. His gaze was sharp, scanning the room before landing on us. He looked at Leo's pale face, at the way his hand was clutching mine like a lifeline. We slid into the booth opposite him. "This is Leo," I said. Thorne gave him a slight nod. "Hey kid, cool hoodie." Leo just mumbled a thanks and looked down at the table. Thorne's eyes met mine. "Okay, Chloe, show me what you've got." Without a word, I pulled the folder of printed screenshots from my bag and slid it across the sticky tabletop. He opened it. He read the first page, then the second. His expression remained unreadable, the perfect poker face of a seasoned detective. He read every line, his eyes tracking the numbers. When the waitress came to offer us menus, he waved her away without looking up. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 5 minutes, he finally closed the folder. He leaned back in the booth and looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't anger or disbelief. It was a kind of grudging respect. "How the hell did you get this?" he asked. "She gave Leo her old laptop," I explained. "She thought she deleted everything. She never emptied the trash bin." Thorne let out a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "They're always stupid in the end," he said. "Arrogance is a killer." He tapped the folder. "This is big, Chloe. We're talking fake vendors, embezzlement, wire fraud, tax evasion, and based on the dates on these files, she's been at it for at least 5 years. "Is it enough?" I asked, my voice tight. "Is it enough to make it stick? My parents, they know the chief of police. They golf with the mayor. They'll try to make this go away." Thorne leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his eyes boring into mine. "They can golf with God himself," he said. "This isn't a parking ticket. This is a federal case. Once I walk this over to the DA's office, not even the president can make it go away." I felt a single tear escape and roll down my cheek. I swiped it away angrily. "She hurt him," I whispered, nodding toward Leo. "She put him in handcuffs just to scare me, to put me back in my place." Thorne's gaze softened as he looked at Leo again, his jaw tightening. "Leo," he said, his voice gentle. Leo looked up. "Did you take that necklace?" "No, sir," Leo said quietly. "I believe you," Thorne said. Leo's eyes went wide. It was the first time an adult other than me had believed him in the last 24 hours. "Chloe," Thorne said, turning back to me, "I'm taking this folder. I'm going to start making some calls. I need you to go home and act completely normal. Do not call your sister. Do not call your parents. If they call you, don't answer." "Why?" "Because if she knows that you know, she'll start shredding evidence. We need the element of surprise." "I can be quiet," I said. "I've been quiet my whole life." "Good," Thorne said, standing up. He dropped a 20 on the table to cover the coffees we never ordered. "You did good work, Reed. She used the system to terrorize a child. Now she's going to face the full weight of it." He put on his sunglasses. "Go home. And maybe watch the morning news tomorrow. It should be an interesting broadcast." He walked out of the diner. I watched him go, feeling a strange lightness in my chest. The crushing weight that had been sitting there since last night was finally beginning to lift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't the messy little sister. I was the one holding the match, and Isabel had built her entire life on a mountain of kindling. Going home after meeting Detective Thorne was a surreal experience. Our small apartment was the same, the slightly worn rug, the stack of mail on the counter, Leo's sneakers by the door, but the air inside felt different, charged with anticipation. It was the heavy calm before a storm. I locked the front door, slid the deadbolt across, and fastened the security chain. I never used the chain, but tonight it felt like I was guarding a state secret. "Mom?" Leo asked from the hallway. "Is Aunt Izzy going to come here?" "No," I said with a certainty that surprised me. "She's not coming here. No one is." "What if she calls the police on us again?" I knelt down to look him in the eye. "She can't hurt us anymore, Leo. We have the real police on our side now." He nodded, though he still looked uncertain. He went to his room and quietly closed the door. I couldn't blame him. Trust, once shattered, is a hard thing to piece back together. I sat on the sofa, staring at my silent phone. My family hadn't called. Not once. Nearly a full day had passed since they watched my son get arrested, and not one of them had bothered to check if he was okay. Their silence was the final confirmation. They didn't care. They were probably relieved we were gone, free to enjoy their evening in peace. I waited. The hours crawled by, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. At 10:15 p.m., my phone vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. "Meet me. Parking lot of the old Starlight Drive-In. 20 minutes." It had to be Thorne. A jolt of anxiety shot through me. Had something gone wrong? Was the evidence not enough? I called my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a kind retiree who adored Leo, and asked her to come sit with him for a bit. The old drive-in theater was a ghost of a place, overgrown with weeds, the giant screen peeling and skeletal against the night sky. Thorne's unmarked sedan was parked in the far corner, deep in the shadows. I pulled up beside him. "Kill the engine," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Get in." I slid into the passenger seat of his car. It smelled of stale coffee and mints. He had a small light on and was flipping through a stack of papers. "Well?" I asked, my voice tight with nerves. He didn't look up immediately. "Chloe," he said, his voice grim, "you were wrong." My heart plummeted. The blood drained from my face. "Wrong? What do you mean? I saw the files." "You were wrong about the amount," he said, finally looking at me. "You thought she was skimming a few $100,000, maybe $1 million?" He held up a sheet of paper covered in highlighted figures. "We ran a preliminary audit based on the account numbers you provided. We cross-referenced with state and federal tax databases." He paused for effect. "She's laundered over $4 million in the last 3 years alone." "$4 million?" I gasped. "At least," Thorne said. "And it gets worse." He pointed to a list of names. "See these? Sarah Jenkins, Michael Ross, David Thorne. They're listed as full-time employees of the foundation, with salaries and benefits." "I've never heard of them," I said. "Isabel runs that office with one part-time assistant." "Exactly," Thorne said. "They're ghost employees. The Social Security numbers belong to deceased individuals. The paychecks are being funneled into offshore shell accounts that trace back to your sister's husband, Julian." I covered my mouth with my hand. Julian was in on it. "Julian is the one washing the money," Thorne confirmed. "They're a team. A very greedy, very sloppy team." He tossed the file onto the dashboard. "When this goes to trial, we're looking at felony fraud, money laundering, identity theft. They're facing a minimum of 20 years in federal prison." 20 years. My sister, the golden child, the one who had everything, was going to prison. The thought made me feel dizzy. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build the case," Thorne said. "We get warrants for bank records, for their home, for the foundation. I need to bring in the FBI because of the interstate wire fraud. It will take time." "Time?" I echoed, panic flaring in my chest. "How much time? Weeks? Months?" "Could be," he said. I can't wait months, I insisted. She thinks she won. She thinks she has me silenced. She'll find another way to hurt Leo to punish me for defying her. Thorne tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the dark, empty lot. The legal system moves at its own pace, Chloe. Justice is slow. I don't just want justice, I said. I want to protect my son, and the only way to do that is to strip her of her power before she can use it against us again. He switched off the small overhead light, plunging us into darkness. As a police officer, he said, his voice barely a whisper, I cannot officially advise you to leak evidence to the press. That would be obstruction, and I'd lose my badge. He looked out the windshield. However, he continued, his voice very low, while the copies you gave me are now evidence, the originals on that laptop are still your personal property, aren't they? Yes, I said, understanding dawning. And what a private citizen chooses to do with their own property. Well, that's not my business. He turned to look at me, his jaw a hard line in the faint moonlight. If this story were to break publicly, he said hypothetically, it would force the DA's hand. They wouldn't be able to sit on it. If it's on the front page of the morning paper, they'd have to make arrests immediately just to control the narrative. So I expose her, I said. You didn't hear that from me, he said. Just let the truth make its own noise. I opened the car door. Thank you, Detective. Get home, Chloe, he said, and try to get some sleep. You're going to need it. I drove home, but I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table and composed an email. I wrote it not as a hurt sister, but as a whistleblower. Subject: The truth about the Sterling Foundation, evidence of widespread fraud. I attached the files, the doctored invoices, the list of ghost employees, the damning emails between Isabel and Julian. I found the email addresses for every major news outlet in the state, the national charity watchdog organizations, and, for good measure, every single member of the foundation's board of directors. I looked at the clock. It was almost 5 a.m. I set the email to send automatically at 8 a.m. M sharp. I hovered my cursor over the schedule send button. This was the point of no return. Clicking this button meant I would be the woman who destroyed her own family. My parents would disown me. Isabel would hate me for the rest of her life. Then I thought about the sound of the handcuffs clicking around Leo's wrists. Click. I pressed the button. The day began in silence. I made toast. I poured orange juice. I told Leo he could have one more day off from school. We were sitting on the couch in our pajamas when the clock turned. At 7:59 a.m., the world was as it had been. Isabel was probably in her gleaming marble kitchen, sipping a green smoothie. My parents were likely reading the newspaper, secure in their perfect world. At 8 a.m., the email was sent. At 8:05 a.m., my phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Local philanthropic foundation under investigation for massive fraud. At 8:15 a.m., it was everywhere. I turned on the TV. A local news channel had cut to a live report. A reporter stood in front of Isabel's office building looking breathless. We have just received a massive trove of documents alleging years of systematic fraud at the prestigious Sterling Foundation. The ticker at the bottom of the screen read, Charity CEO Isabel Montgomery accused of embezzlement. My phone began to buzz uncontrollably. Texts from friends, calls from cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. I ignored them all. I just watched. By 9 a.m., news vans were parked on Isabel's manicured lawn. The aerial shot from a news helicopter showed her driveway was completely blocked. She was trapped inside her glass mansion. A cold, hard satisfaction settled in my stomach. She always craved the spotlight. Well, now she had it. Then at 9:30 a.m., the call I had been dreading came. Mom calling. My hand trembled slightly as I looked at the screen. The little girl inside me, the one conditioned to please her, was terrified. But I wasn't that little girl anymore. I swiped to answer. Hello? What have you done? My mother didn't say hello. It was a raw, animalistic shriek. Chloe, what have you done? Turn on your television. They are crucifying your sister. I'm watching, Mom, I said, my voice eerily calm. Did you do this? She demanded. Isabel said you stole her laptop and faked these files. How could you do this to your own flesh and blood? I didn't fake anything, I said. I just showed the world who she really is. She is innocent, my mother screamed. She is a good person. She helps children. She helps herself, Mom, I said, to the tune of $4 million. Lies, it's all lies. She was sobbing now, a torrent of frantic, self-pitying tears. You're just jealous. You have always been jealous of her success, of her life, while you have nothing. You have nothing. The words, which once would have shattered me, now felt hollow. Looking at Leo, safe on the couch beside me, I knew how untrue they were. I'm not nothing, I said softly. I'm the mother of the boy you let them arrest. This is about that stupid necklace, she shrieked. You're destroying this family over a piece of jewelry? No, I said. I didn't destroy this family. Isabel did when she committed federal crimes. You did when you chose a thief over your own grandson. You will fix this, she ordered, her voice dropping to a menacing hiss. You will call those reporters and tell them you lied. You tell them you made it all up. If you don't, Chloe, I swear to you, you are dead to us. We will cut you off completely. You will never see us or a penny of our money again. I walked to the window and looked out at the sunny street. It was a beautiful day. Cut me off? I asked. Mom, you cut me off years ago. You just never had the decency to tell me. Chloe. No, Mom, I said, my voice firm. I'm done. I'm not fixing this. Isabel wanted to be a queen. Now she has to face her subjects. You've ruined your sister's life, she wailed. No, I said. I've just destroyed her illusion. I hung up the phone. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I did something I should have done a lifetime ago. I blocked her number. I blocked my father's number. I blocked Isabel's. The silence that followed was not lonely. It was peace. Who was that? Leo asked from the couch. Nobody, I said, turning to him with a genuine smile. Just a wrong number. The TV flashed a new headline. FBI raids Sterling Foundation headquarters. I sat down next to my son. Leo, I said, how about we order a pizza for lunch? Anything you want? He grinned, the first real grin I'd seen in days. Pepperoni and extra cheese? Pepperoni and extra cheese, I agreed. Outside, the storm of their own making was tearing their world apart. But inside our little apartment, for the first time in a long, long time, everything was finally okay.